and let us all do we can to build a better future. We got a lot to talk about, and we got a lot of subjects to go over. So first, let's start off with some breaking news. This is from RT America, so everyone be quiet. Don't tell Rachel Maddow.
Kit actually is now legally contracted to do every single show with Russia Today. It's just how it worked out.
Are you registered as like a foreign agent?
No. Unfortunately, everyone, I do not work for RT America. Though, hey, listen,
just 50% of the stories. Yeah, you do.
Well, I like their work, and when YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter want to censor anyone, it's like, no. Come on, and RT has done some fantastic work. So here's what's happening. Facebook Oversight Board upholds the Trump ban, but says it was inappropriate for the site to make the suspension indefinite. So what's going on? Well, there's been, if you haven't been paying attention on social media, a lot of people have been saying hashtag delete Facebook, be it on the right or liberals who are saying, oh, well, we got to do something about Facebook because, oh no, Trump might come back. Ooh, even though he hasn't gone anywhere. Facebook's Oversight Board has upheld the social network's decision to ban Donald Trump following the January 6th storming of the Capitol. However, it criticized the way in which Trump was banned in vague and indefinite terms. Well, no duh. Well, then you shouldn't have done it in the first place. And I said this here on the show that as soon as Trump is taken off of social media and those that are, more politically aligned with him or those that have tweeted him out, they're going to start coming after progressives and independents and libertarians. And that's just a fact. I'm very sorry if that offends people, but when you are in a super fast rush to censor one group, then everyone's put on the chopping block because I stand against censorship. In a statement on Wednesday, the board announced that it upholds Facebook's decision on January 7th, 2021, to restrict then-President Donald Trump's access to posting content on its Facebook page and Instagram account. However, it was not appropriate for Facebook to impose the intermediate and standardless penalty of indefinite suspension. The statement continued, pointing out that Facebook's normal penalties include removing the violating content, imposing a time-bound period of suspension, or permanently disabling the page and account. The board went on to recommend that Facebook review the situation to determine and justify appropriate response that is consistent with the rules that are applied to other users of its platforms, and that it should do so within 6 months. Hey, Dan, 6 months.
Yeah, that's literally what happened with our timeout.
Yeah.
6 months is a long time,
It's enough to destroy your entire channel's momentum. That's right.
Yes, and there are many other independent media networks that are dealing with that suspension, and it's really impacting them too. If the social network takes the full 6 months to make its decision, it will have been close to a year since Trump was banned from posting to his Facebook and Instagram accounts. Trump's final post on Facebook before his ban, as supporters stormed the U.S. Capitol in protest at his 2020 election defeat to President Joe Biden, read, "I'm asking for everyone at the U.S. Capitol to remain peaceful. No violence! Exclamation point. Remember, we, capitalized, are the party of law and order. Respect the law and our great men and women in blue. Thank you." Several people died during and after the incident, including Ashley Babbitt, a Trump supporter who was shot and killed by a Capitol Police officer for trying to climb through a window. Though Trump called on those involved in the storming to go home and abstain from violence, he continued to claim in posts that the election was rigged and was subsequently banned from Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, Pinterest, Snapchat, and other tech platforms, including digital payment processors, Stripe, and Shopify. So, yes, I have some very mixed feelings about this. On the one hand, look, Donald Trump did everything that he's posted. He did this to himself. But on the other hand, too, with big tech making this decision, it puts a fear in me in regards towards, okay, well, if they're willing to do this to a former president, everyone's put on the chopping block. And what did we see after January 6th? Yeah, everyone was so happy that, oh no, Trump was gone. But you think him and his 75 plus million volunteers are going to disappear overnight? That's not what's going to happen. And there's a lot of rumors right now of him potentially running in 2024. But what else did we see? We saw a lot of independent media networks getting censored, strikes, shadow bans, being demonetized. Heartlands Media, we got hit hard not once but twice. Convo Couch, Nico House, Jordan Sheridan's Status Quo, Ford Fisher's YouTube channel, Frank Analysis, Jackson Hickle, Lee Camp, Ron Placone, Graham Elwood, Jimmy Dore, and even Kyle Kalinske too. We're seeing a lot of progressive and independent media channels. I mean, Dan, how many times have you pointed us on the show to where, again, we're seeing a huge stop with people subscribing to independent media. So I want to open up this floor. Kira, I think we'll start off with you, and then we'll have a final note from Daniel. What are your thoughts on this, especially with how Facebook is still saying, we're done with Trump, you're going to
Yeah, I think that this case is particularly interesting, right? Because when we heard about this, this group of people, whoever they are, that are, deciding on whether or not,
the lizard men of Facebook.
I mean, how many people are on this, supposed, Facebook Supreme Court? Who are they? How are they qualified to be on that court? We don't know. That's all a mystery. Well, I don't know. I should say. I haven't seen information anywhere, and it could be out there. I can't say that I've necessarily looked for it, but I have no idea who's on this Facebook Supreme Court. But what's really interesting about this, and what I'm getting from this, is that basically this Facebook Supreme Court is looking down on this banning situation, saying hey, when you did this, you didn't set up any rules around it. You didn't set up any expiration date around this ban, and users of Facebook have no idea what they would need to do to get banned indefinitely because you don't have any of this information out there. So, they set up this Supreme Court thing as a check for themselves, and it seems to be doing that, although 6 months is a really long time for them to come up with some sort of decision on how long this ban should take place, what exactly you have to do to be banned indefinitely or whatever amount of time. And then I've shared my thoughts on the whole free speech conversation and, basically platforms like Facebook that are still technically private entities, but are also, Mark Zuckerberg is safe from being liable for anything because the government, because he has an LLC with our government that supports it. So it's is he responsible for the same, for the same laws that the government might be responsible for adhering to, things like freedom of speech. Right. And then on the other hand, it's well, do we actually, do we protect speech that invokes violence? And then the question is did Trump's speech invoke violence? So it's just a really murky water to be swimming in. Yep. But I do find it interesting that this Supreme Court is basically telling the powers that be at Facebook, hey, you can't just indefinitely censor somebody. That's just not going to fly. Interesting.
Yeah. Dan.
So I would wonder a couple things. So first, to jump back on the beginning of this. My core issue, as it always is whenever these things happen, is that fundamentally, anytime an event like this happens, corporations are being given more power over how people can speak. Now, we know the government has a lot of exceptions to the First Amendment on what they can stop people from saying and speak about. We don't have anything really that is there except for each platform's view on how many viewers they're going to gain or lose by making these decisions. So it's a monetary one. I still have not been convinced that anything Trump said that day was actually calling for what happened. What I think made more sense is there's a lot of people that were really convinced of a lot of things before Trump ever took office, and Trump just added a few more bricks or a few more logs to a pyre that already existed and was already going to go off at some point. We've seen events in the past, not specifically in D.C., but in other places. What's the guy's name that they took over the bird sanctuary?
Oh yeah,
that's a thing that happened. That was a pretty big.
The Bundy Ranch, right?
The Bundy Ranch, that entire standoff that happened.
Yeah,
people were coming from all over the place to one spot. That wasn't Trump. This is a thing that has been built up. Trump added to it. Do we say that he has some accountability? Sure. Is he the one that set it off? Not by the bounds of free speech as the United States has made it. But what happened was, I remember when we were covering that live, the news had decided that Trump had said that and he was the one that caused it. Those are the deciders. Those are the people who said across the board, yes, this is cut and dry. This is black and white. Trump is the one that's doing this. And again, there's nothing. If that is the status, that is the standard that we're going to be using. Mainstream media should not be on anywhere on Facebook for the exact same reasons. Mm-hmm. Let's be clear on that. So then you take that and you say, okay, well, did Trump start this? it's a lot of people started this. A lot of people got there. A lot of people started this. There's a thing that happened. Then once that happened, is it right for Trump to be banned off Facebook? And again, that goes to that point I made earlier. I don't like asking that question in that way. The question I like asking is it right for corporations to unanimously silence anyone that they think that they can do, even if it's the president of the United States that you really don't like? That is the real terrifying part of this. And now Facebook's like, oh, we have our own Supreme Court. That's also terrifying because we know the courts that they do. We know that they have people from the military-industrial complex that go on these courts. We know that Israel is very fond of destroying any BLM Palestinian page that exists or has the idea of existing at some point. I don't like giving corporations this kind of power. And I think that's very scary because they're able to skirt around the entire First Amendment until they become what they really are, a public square, which is what they need to be in a net neutrality situation. But that's not where we're at. So when Trump starts knocking off these platforms, all of them follow suit, which is another issue. Can you imagine? Like, we're talking about Trump might be running again in 2024. Let's say he does. What happens if the first day he announces his campaign, every single platform goes, no, not here.
They can't
because
do
if
that
they're
to
going to
a
be able to
president.
do that to him, if they can do it to a sitting president,
or a former president, yeah, too.
but at that point, yeah, regardless, they pulled away from him once they knew he was running out of power. But what happens if there's a real Bernie Sanders that comes along who really does mean what they say and will go through with it? What happens if they're a little too rowdy for Facebook or Twitter or YouTube, and then they can just go, you no longer exist before their campaign even gets started? That's really scary.
Maybe that's why Bernie always emphasized that the establishment, he was friends with them.
Yeah. I want to just end this on a final note. Look, I don't approve of the things that Trump has said on social media, but you want to know what's really disturbing is that there are people that have said far, far worse. And there are also people within the establishment. It was even within the Democratic Party that have the fancy neoliberal mask on. But if we look at their policies, they're just as deplorable as Donald Trump is. And they're very good at hiding who they are because right now we have a system that's being run by greedy sociopaths. And so, look, Trump is just... The thing about him, he's up front. At least you know where you stand with the person, and you don't have to like him. I don't. But at least, you know, his brutal honesty, however deplorable it is, at least you know where he stands on issues. But the fact that, again, being censored, being deplatformed, as he was, it opens up the door for people that you follow to our viewing audience, whether you are libertarian, green, or socialist, or however you politically identify, or whoever you worship. It puts us all in a chopping block. And this is a very big concern because there's a lot of content creators, especially independent media, that uses Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And we're losing our livelihoods. We're losing a chance to really get our voice out there. And we need independent media now more than ever. We've done 2 stories this week about censorship and how corporate media is right now trying to control the narrative. And I don't know what it's going to look like down the road. And yes, these are all private entities, but we have to look at alternatives. And, you know, I'm very curious to see how it's going to play out in 2024 if Trump chooses to run again, because then we're going to, especially the establishment media and big tech, are going to be put in a very weird spot. And we'll see just truly how democratic they are. That's why we have to look at different platforms like Odyssey and Rockfin, because at least they respect free thinking media and free speech.